What is up, guys? It's TimeForDillon, back at it again with another programming tutorial. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys are awesome. If you're new here, we are continuing on with our series, Learning Python using ChatGPT. So in today's video, what we're going to do is cover lesson number 5, talking all about lists. So if you guys haven't already watched lessons 1 through 4, I highly suggest you guys go back, watch those videos so you can catch up to where we're at in today's video. But of course, without further ado, let's head on over to sololearn.com and get started with lesson 5. Let's get it. Alrighty guys, here we are at sololearn.com. Now, as you guys can see, we finished the first 4 lessons. So we've gone over the super duper basics, and now we're starting to touch more complex topics like lists, like loops. And of course, the further along we go, the more difficult it is going to get. But of course, we have something that a lot of people didn't have just a couple years ago. And that, my friends, is the ultimate expert, the ultimate well of knowledge, ChatGPT. So in the first lesson, we talked about some basics, right? Some integers, some strings, outputting that data. Then we went a little bit deeper. We talked about debugging the code. So we write the code, we run the code, we fix the errors. Talked about some naming conventions. And then we went a little bit further. We consulted the expert, ChatGPT. And of course, we learned about conditional statements. Then, of course, we went a little deeper, working with the data. So we talked about formatting the output so we can include variables with the text. And then, of course, we talked about fixing some of the data types. For example, when you want to print out a number, you have to tell the compiler, hey, look at this as a string and not as a number. So we talked all about that. And then, of course, in the last lesson, we went even deeper. We introduced while loops. And a loop is just running a certain block of code a certain amount of times. And of course, everything we can specify. If you guys didn't see in our program, we even put loops in our function to return staking rewards based on epoch time. So we tried to make this as realistic as possible. Of course, as we continue on with these lessons, we're going to make things more in-depth and more realistic to the actual blockchain. Eventually, we will even include some blockchain programming. But we gotta lay the foundation first. We have to understand the basics. Eventually, we will get there. So, if you guys are interested in this, you want to follow along, I highly suggest you guys smash the like button, click the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notified when I post the new videos. And of course, if you have any suggestions, any comments, any concerns, drop them down below. I'm totally open to any type of constructive criticism. But of course, what does our program do? It is a spin-off, right, of the Hello World program, which is the classic first program everyone writes. Of course, I had to make it blockchain based, so we named it Hello Blockchain. But basically the way this works, if we click run, boom, you have to enter a name. Charles will be the first. He has how much ADA? A lot. Boom. And then of course, TimeForDillon. I only have 100 ADA, man. And then of course, what does it output? It outputs Charles has 1 million ADA. I have 100. Charles will have 1.035 million ADA after he stakes for 1 year with 3.5% APY. And of course, I will only have 103.5 ADA after staking for 1 year at the same rate. And then of course, we output at the end who has more based on our little logic down here. So if wallet 1 has more, output, Charles has more. Otherwise, we're gonna output that I have more. If we have the same, we're gonna tell people, hey, we have the same. So this is where we're at so far. Super simple. However, if you are brand new to programming, this right here is super cool to show your friends, your family, your mom. Almost 100 lines of code. If somebody doesn't know anything about programming, they're going to think you are a G. Let's keep building. Let's keep learning. Let's go back to Solo Learn and see what today's lesson has in store for us. So we're going to learn about lists. First part is to talk about actually what are lists. Then we're going to talk about list operations, right? Adding lists together, subtracting lists from each other. Who knows what we're going to see. Then we're going to talk about a new type of loop. Instead of a while loop, this one is called a for loop. So similar to a while loop, it's going to execute a certain block of code X amount of times. This time, what's cool about the for loop is that we can tell the compiler all the information in the top line of code. So not like the while loop, where we have to initialize the variable, then do the loop, and then at the bottom line of the loop, tell the compiler, hey, iterate the counter by 1. We don't have to do all that. All of that is in one line at the top. So convenient way of doing loops. However, there are different times to use a for loop and different times to use a while loop, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in today's lesson. And then of course ranges and list slices, and then quiz to finish up. And as you guys can see, after this lesson, we only have one more, functions, which we already talked about thanks to ChatGPT. But of course, we're going to go way more in depth with functions. That way we can actually understand what and how to implement them professionally. And then once we're done with the next lesson, guys, you're actually going to have a certificate which you can show to your future employer. Now, I know sometimes people think a degree is necessary. If you're not going to get a degree, you're not going to go to school, you have to do something like this. Get some certificates off of a website, pile all your code together on a certain website that you build, and then you can go to your employer and say, hey, I didn't go to school, but look at the proof. The proof is in the pudding. I know how to code. Look at all my code. Look at all my certificates. So that's where we are today. Just like last time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward through these lessons, and then we're going to meet back up at the end, talk about what we learned, and implement some new information into our program that we've been building since lesson 1. Now, I highly suggest that you guys press pause now, finish this lesson, and then meet back up with me once we are both done. So without further ado, let's jump into lesson 5, lists. Let's get it. Alrighty guys, there we go. We just finished up lesson 5, talking all about lists. So what did we cover? We introduced the concept of lists, which basically just hold numerous data types in one data type. It's pretty cool. So we can have like numbers, which hold a whole bunch of numbers, or we could have like words, which holds a whole bunch of words, or I can think of a list, that maybe holds 24 words, or maybe even 12 words that we could call seed phrase. So that's like what lists are. And then we introduced all kinds of operations that we can use with the lists, how to grab or obtain different items or indices in that list by using the bracket, the square brackets. So we can tell it to get, the last one or the first one or whatever number that particular item happens to be in the list. After that, we talked about for loops. So all about for loops. For loops are basically kind of similar to while loops, but the big difference is that we use a for loop when we know how many times we want to iterate through a certain list, or whatever, how many times we want to iterate through this certain block of code. While the while loop, we typically use the while loop when we don't know how many times we want to iterate through something. After that, we talked about ranges, which are exactly what you think they are, ranges of numbers. We can use that to do all kinds of separate things. And then of course we talked about list slicing. So grabbing particular parts of a list. So now that we learned all about lists and for loops and everything in between, let's head on over to Spider and implement what we learned. So the first couple things that I want to do just right off the bat is, like, for instance, these numbers right here, I want to format them so that they look a little bit better. You know what I mean? I don't want 70,000 zeros after the decimal point. So what I want to do is I want to format the text to output the number with only 2 values after the decimal point. So what I'm going to do is I'm just actually going to copy this, and I'm going to see if ChatGPT can do this for me. We'll copy that, head on over to ChatGPT. Can you please format this to only have two digits after the decimal? Boom. Cool. So can you format this for me? Boom. So we have to format the string. So let's see how they do it. They're going to do it like this. Blump. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to take this. It's formatted string. equals blah, and then we're going to print out the formatted string. So let's come back over here. What we will do is we will put this there. Boom. And then we're going to do the exact same thing. We'll erase this. Formatted string. 1. And then we will do the same exact thing. Formatted string 2. Name 2. Wallet 2. Blah, 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 blah. And then of course, take this. Bingo bango. Formatted string 2. We'll save it. Let's run it. See if that worked. Okay. C D E. And there we go, people. We got it formatted, looking pretty good. All right, so now that we have the text formatted properly, what I want to do is I want to implement what we just learned in this lesson. I want to implement a list. And like I said, one great thing that we could use this list for is to store our seed phrase in there. Now, of course, I know, never in a million years would anybody in their right mind write their seed phrase down and output it in a computer program. I know, that would be encrypted, it would be stored somewhere else, but for the sake of this lesson, we're just going to pretend that we live in a world where you can do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to create 2 seed phrases, one for wallet 1, one for wallet 2, and then of course we're going to output that so that the user can see. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we could technically make a function to do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to create 2 seed phrases. Seed phrase 1 equals boom. Now let's see. This is, we'll do this is, oh, you know what we'll do? We're not going to write it ourselves. We are just going to go right over to ChatGPT and have it generate a list. Can you generate a Python list with 24 English words? Words for me, please. Can you generate 2 Python lists with 24 different English words for me, please? Boom. And I'm sure it's going to be able to do this real quick for me. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom. List 1, list 2, blah, 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 blah. While it's doing that, let's see. Copy, come on back. We're going to go ahead and paste this right here. Bing. List 1 and list 2. Now those are the words. Of course. Eventually, we're going to make this way more realistic. We're going to randomize the words. We're going to even import libraries that will allow us to take words from databases that hold every single word on the English language. But right now, that's out of the scope of this lesson. So let's just go ahead and do this, right? We have 2 lists now. Let's rename them seed underscore phrase 1. And of course, seed underscore phrase 2. Boom. Now we have our seed phrases. Let's go ahead and add a comment. These are pretend seed phrases for our wallets. Boom. Now what we could do, which I'm not going to do because this would be a disaster, is we could technically have the user input a couple different seed phrase words and make sure that they're correct. And if they are correct, then we will output the user data. Maybe we'll do that in the next lesson. Once we know about functions, things will be a lot easier. We can implement that as a function. And I think that might be a good thing for the next lesson. But for now, we'll just keep it kind of simple. Blah, blah, blah. We'll put the seed phrases there. And then down here, let's see. Where are we going to do it? Enter your name, right? Enter the name 1, wallet 1, name 2, wallet 2. Then we're going to output the name. And we're going to go ahead and print. Actually, what we need to do is we need to loop through that list and output every single indices. So for I in seed phrase 1, we're going to print I. And that will go ahead and print out every single word that's in there. And you know what, actually, let's just go ahead and do this. We'll just print out seed phrase 1. And then right here, we'll go ahead and print out seed phrase 2. Boom. Now let's save this. Let's run this bad boy. Boom. Okay, Charles. He has a lot. Dylan, I have a little bit. Boom. There we go. We now have the seed phrase and the seed phrase. Okay, now we can format this. Name 1 plus boom. S. Seed phrase is boom plus seed phrase. Cool. Now we can kind of copy this same thing right here, blah, put it here, name 2. Seed phrase is plus seed phrase 2, save it, run it again. Okay, let's scroll this up so you guys can see. Okay, so we have Charles. He has that much. Dylan has 1. Uh-oh. Dylan. 1. Oh, messed up. 1. Okay, what happened here? You can only concatenate string, not list to string. Okay. Let's see if we could do this. I'm actually not even sure if we could do this, but we will try. If not, we're going to have to just add it in on the bottom in another print statement. Or we can ask ChatGPT. I'm really not sure. We'll see right now. This is the fun of programming. You write, you test, you write, you test, you write, you test, you write, you test. It's never simple like the movies, unfortunately. But that's part of the fun, problem solving. That's part of programming. That's why we're here. It's fun. Okay. So C has that much. D has that much. There we go. There we go. So that worked. So we are able to actually fix the data type, just like we learned in what, lesson 3? We're able to change the data type in order to concatenate it to strings. So cool. Now this is where we're going to stop in today's lesson. We're going to keep it very short with changing our program up. But in the next lesson, we're going to really ramp this thing up and make it a hell of a lot more complex. In the next lesson, what I plan on doing is I plan on importing text, right? So that we can actually make random seed phrases. We're going to turn that into a function. And then after we do that, we're also going to make another function that will ask the user to enter in random indices of its seed phrase list to make sure that it matches. And if it does, then we will output the user data. So it's going to be a lot in the next lesson. I don't want to overwhelm you guys too much today because the lesson that we did on solo learn was kind of long. And yeah, I think this is a good place to stop. Now, if you guys made it this far, give yourselves a pat on the back. We're almost up to 100 lines of code. In the next lesson, we are definitely going to be passing up 100 lines of code. We're going to be talking about some pretty cool functions. So I'm super excited for you guys. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to drop them down below or even reach out to me on Twitter. I'll be happy to help you guys. But you should definitely be proud of yourself. You're learning how to program. You're also learning how to use the ultimate tool, ChatGPT. So shout out to you guys. That's all I have for you guys today. If you guys made it this far, you guys are awesome. Make sure you smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Try to post daily crypto coding videos for you guys. If that's something you're into, follow along. But you guys have a beautiful day, beautiful night, wherever you guys are. Dylan is out.